Good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for coming tonight for our exploration of school facilities. I'm Josh Johnson, Superintendent of Valley City Public Schools, and I'd like to make a couple of quick introductions before we get started. First of all, our board members that were able to be present here tonight are Sherry Horsager, board member, and Phil Hatcher, board member. For some of you that know, Darren Anderson's a farmer and has had limited opportunity to be able to be out in the field, and so hopefully the rain showers avoided where he was at this evening, and then Natalie Winch was unable to be here this evening as well. We do have a few of our steering committee members that were able to be here as well. Christy Brand, Tom Van Orney were able to be here as well, and thank those individuals that have committed a lot of their time over the last 9 months, helping us to explore our school facilities at Valley City Public Schools. So, you know, hindsight, I'm going to schedule this next year if we have a facilities meeting on a Sunday night about the same time that we have senior prank. We would be able to put better surveillance on the school grounds about this time going forward in the future, and so I'll have some vision that we'll be able to work on. So thanks again for being here. The journey for us over the last 9 months has been exciting, it's been challenging, but I think the biggest thing of all, it's been very educational for us as a school district, and we look forward to being able to share with you a lot of information that we've been able to obtain this school year. And anytime as we go through, we have a limited number of people, and some that are going to be following along after this meeting online with us as we're going to share this information out tomorrow as well. But we want this to very much be part of a discussion or a conversation, and for people to feel free to ask questions. And so don't feel that you have to wait until the very end as we're closing down shop here tonight. If there's questions, feel free to raise your hand, and I'll do the best to answer questions for you. If you were here at the last meeting, you're going to hear some different things, and you're going to say, well, that's not what you said at the last meeting. And you know, I teach my kids, you know, they have to be willing to fail at what they do and correct themselves. And so I am going to take this opportunity tonight to correct some things that I said inaccurately at the last meeting, and we'll fix that for the record. So let's get started. First of all, we back up to August, and I think most everybody knows, post-COVID, if you will, we received a large amount of allocation from the federal government that was intended to help our schools with their recovery. And we received $3.8 million as a school district. And again, that was based on our enrollment and free and reduced numbers. And 20% of that had to be set aside for education or academic specific purposes, what was referred to as learning loss. So $800,000 was set aside. We had $3 million remaining. And so in August, I presented to the board and said, all right, here's $3 million. This may be a one-time shot to really do some meaningful, impacting facility needs in our school district with a one-time $3 million allocation. And so we had our annual board retreat in August, and I had a general plan that I had presented to the board and said we could take about $1.5 million, we could allocate here, we could take $500,000, we could put at Jefferson, Washington, and then put some money up at the Career Tech Center. And from that conversation, board member said, have we ever looked at our facilities as a whole, and have we looked at new buildings or new facilities, and particularly trying to consolidate those schools for the purposes of efficiencies? And so there was great discussion that we had, and from then it really grew into this question, and that was with this appropriation of grant dollars that we received in July, should Valley City Public Schools renovate our existing buildings, or do we consider a bond referendum to build a new school? And so that really began in earnest the 9 months of exploration, as we tagged it, of identifying and trying to come up with an answer to this question. So we'll share with you the information, the findings of what we were able to glean from that. And I did acknowledge with the board at the last meeting, I feel like I should do this as well, is that while it's been interesting, it's been It's been time consuming, and I think I have gained a few more gray hairs along the way, presenting information to the public and answering questions. But again, I think as a district we're better off now than where we were previously, having dove so deep into the information regarding our facilities. So before we jump forward and share that information with you, let's take a quick step back and look at the timeline from when we began in August. So again, we had a school board retreat in August. We said, okay, let's take a look at this. So we formed a steering committee with representative of teachers and administration and different staff members across our school district, one from each of our different schools. And we set out and hired consultants. We hired a construction firm, management firm, we hired architects, and the purpose behind that was, again, to dive in and look at our existing structures as well as to look at what does a new structure look like in today's day and age to be able to get cost estimates with square footage. And so that was the intent behind reaching out to some consultants. Over the course of about a month, 6 weeks, we dove in, did some work, and scheduled our first public meetings, and those were held in the third week of October up at the BCHS Theater. At that meeting, we presented to you our capital maintenance plan of what we identified as our facility needs all across the school district. That, along with our facility study, and to differentiate the two, capital maintenance plan is our specific facility needs, such as our heating system, coolers. The facility study was the adequacy, so how we rated our facility spaces in general, from poor to good to the best. Along the same times, immediately following our public meetings, we conducted a community survey. And the purpose of the community survey was to present the information and then to be able to get a response. And this was a big piece of our public meetings, as well as then to get the information that we want back from our community. And so we sent out a survey out to our community. We had over 1,000 responses to that, which was a 28% response from all the eligible voters in our school district. And so we thought that number was a good representation of our public and voting members. In November, we presented that information to the board, and within that, it was mixed. We had some that had strong opinions that said, hey, absolutely, we should be looking at building a new school. There was others, particularly our older population, that said, concerned about the cost associated with this. I don't think we should build new, and we should invest our dollars into renovating our schools. And so we had mixed. The majority of our parent population and our staff members were voting in support of that. 56 and older, again, majority of that population was opposed. Majority of our ag community was opposed at 53%, and the commercial community, 56%, were in support. So again, we were kind of in this mix in support or opposed. 18% of our population, so 18% of the respondents said, I'm undecided at this time. You guys and our board president, Ryan Mathias, jokes with me is that we shot out of the cannon like a rocket. And the reason why we did is because of the timelines of the grant applications, particularly the CTE grant, which we'll get to here in a second. And so I think a lot of people in October, when they were filling out the survey, said, hold on, just slow down just a little bit here. I got to get my bearings to know which direction I think the school district should go. And so that's where the 18% in response said, I don't know. I'm unclear on what is the best. I need more information. So moving forward, we were all building to, again, a CT grant application, and $10 million, up to $10 million was set aside for new or expanding renovated career and tech education facilities. As part of our new school proposal, we were looking to include Cheyenne Valley Area Career Tech Center with a new construction. And so what ended up happening, the application was submitted at the end of December, and we put in a paralleled application. An application that consisted of or was contingent upon a bond referendum with a new school for $10 million of matching funds. and the other was for a remodeled Cheyenne Valley Area Career Tech Center. And so that grant was submitted at the end of December, and I'm going to come back to that in a moment. We waited January and February. We stepped back, we listened to our public that said, we need more information, we need some time to process what you are sharing, as well as then we were waiting to find out the results of our Career and Tech Education grant. As that information was submitted, it was being processed at the state level. So in March, we learned that Cheyenne Valley Area Career Tech Center received a $3.1 million grant award. Not the $10 million that we were hoping for. That was going to be able to be used as a matching dollar for a new school. So that helped us to push us on the next path forward, and that was to come back to the table and say, okay, Career and Tech Center, looks like they have a pathway, they're going to go to the remodeled renovation, not going to be part of Valley City Public Schools at this time. And so we went back to the drawing board. One thing that we did do, based on the feedback we had from the community survey, as well as the public meetings, was the question, how come you guys don't look at a K-12 at this time? If you remember back, we were proposing a 412 to try to capitalize on the consolidations of cost savings by joining Washington with our junior senior high school. And some of the feedback was, well, if you're going to do it, you may as well do the whole thing. And so we couldn't answer some of the questions, and that was, what's the cost on a K-12 facility? And so in April, when we learned the results of the CT grant, we then went back to our architects and said, put together, like, if we had a K3, a 4-6, and a 7-12. And I'll explain that and what the results were of that here in a minute. And then, of course, here we are, third week of May, last week of school, and presenting the results of our exploration with you. Any questions? I'm going to pause a second. So one thing that came from our findings, again, in October, we had our consultants, our construction managers, and our architects take a deep dive with us. Jordan Heck's not able to be here tonight, our facilities director, but Jordan spent a couple days going around and touring our facilities and diving into everything from our heating, cooling systems, to plumbing, to electrical, to classrooms and interiors, exteriors, roofing systems, and everywhere in between. And what we came out with was a general rough number, and I want to emphasize that as well, is that $26 million is what our consultants have said, this is what an entire complete capital maintenance overhaul would cost the school district at this time, given time. So this was October, and of course, if you're using an inflationary number, you can about guess where that number has gone from October to May. But again, this number, for the sake of the presentation tonight, was provided to us in October. We estimate this number as $87, the cost per square foot. And again, that number is going to be important. I'm going to reference that here in a moment. The greatest need that we have is $15 million, and that comes from our junior senior high school, and I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. You are not standing in our junior senior high school right now. This was a facility that was constructed in 2003. It was a great addition to our school district. We like people coming through and seeing this facility, attending a ball game, and we try to lock the door so that they don't go any further. No, I don't mean that, because we are proud of all of our facilities. The 102-year-old junior senior high school is just showing its age. And so there's specific needs that we have, and exactly what those are. About $11 million are heating, cooling, which we have very little of, and ventilation systems. And so it's across the district, it's $11 million, not specifically at the junior senior high school. And somebody asked at the last meeting, well, do we need air conditioning? No, we don't need air conditioning, but we do need quality airflow going through our classrooms. And if you can imagine, and it's easy for some of us to say when you sit in air-conditioned or climate-controlled environment, when it's 85 to 90 degrees in a classroom at the start of the school, at the end of the school year, that gets pretty tough on learning for our kids. And so it's more about climate control than it is about we need air conditioning in our schools. In the winter time, sometimes our heating systems have a ability to get out of balance, and so we can have classrooms that are 90 degrees in January, and then you go to the next classroom and it's 60 degrees. And so the system is showing its age as it relates relative to the heating. Electrical, primary cost on electrical is if you do a renovation, you have to be up to code, and so that's our fire suppression system that would need to be updated along with the plumbing piece of it as well. Seems like every year we have plumbing issues, and again, I think that's no surprise to Valley City either. And so updating the plumbing and addressing the needs that we have there. Roofing is primarily the junior, senior high school. With the leaks that we have 18 different roof levels, and so every time you've matched a roof line, it allows for leaks to occur. And so we do have buckets set up in events that we get a lot of rain. And so $1 million approximately to address that. $750,000 for security. And again, to specifically address this is creating more secured entrances. Right now we have door buzzers, so people coming up to a door have to buzz to be able to get in. The issue we have with all of our offices right now and all of our schools is that you can buzz to get in, but at that point you have access to the school. You don't walk into an office. So at schools that have been designed the last 7-8 years, schools are designed so that you walk into an office area, you're greeted, you sign in, you explain the purpose of what you're there for, and you go from that point. And again, my concern is not so much from a safety and security standpoint about the next active shooter to our district or our school buildings. We deal with a lot of custody issues, a lot of things come up where parents or other people have no purpose being in our schools and go out and wander because they gain access one way or another way. And so it's improving the safety and security of our district. And then the last one is approximately $500,000 for windows. So those are the greatest needs that we have. If you're doing the math, you're going to be able to tally up that that's not $26 million. So where does everything else come in there? That is our flooring, to our interior doors, to exterior systems, a lot of other miscellaneous costs that go into that to make up the complete $26 million. I want to give a quick shout out. At the last meeting, Representative Kiefert was here, and tonight we have Senator Wabama and Representative Christensen. Back in March, Valley City, Cheyenne Valley was awarded $5.1 million. There were some reconsiderations, some changes that were made to the application, and Cheyenne Valley went from $5.1 million to $0. Dollars were shifted by a committee that was put into place to make a recommendation to the State Career and Tech Center Board. And those dollars were shifted to other centers, and we, along with a few others, Devils Lake being one of them, went from celebrating allotted money to improve career tech education to having $0. And so our committee, consisting of local individuals with Career Tech Center, with Valley City Public Schools, picked up the phone, called our representatives, and they went to bat for us, making the right contacts in Bismarck. Long short of it is that we end up with $3.1 million. And so thanks to those individuals, thanks to Jennifer Feist, Derek Bope, local individuals who really advocated for these dollars to come locally to us. And so thanks to those individuals. And again, we're hopeful that more dollars that would be used for career and tech education could be in the pipeline in future legislative sessions as well. So, put this into perspective to Valley City Public Schools, $10 million is not there. And so we had built that in as part of our COVID dollars, $3 million, our $10 million for a CTE grant. And so where do you make up the difference of not having $10 million? So Cheyenne Valley Area Career Tech Center is going forward with a $3.1 million project, remodeled project. It's going to be likely one of many phases to get their building up to where they need it to be or where they want it to be. back to our feedback. So we stepped out and said, let's take a phased approach. We had shared information that we thought a new building, a new 412 building was going to cost between $55 and $65 million back in the fall, and that was going to include career and tech education. That would include some remodeling to Jefferson Elementary. That would include the demolishing, some other things. And so we said, okay, so we listened. What does this look like if we're going to phase this in, understanding that costs were on the rise as we were doing this. And so what we wanted to share with you, the piece of paper that was handed at the front, I just want to hit this from a high level. And again, for those that are watching this recorded, we'll have this information available on our website so you can take a look at this. But what I want to point out is the location of this. We had talked about some area up by the interstate. We had talked about Highline Park. And so based, again, on the feedback, that we felt like Highline Park was the best location. This is Hannah Field. To give you some bearings, the pollinator garden is down in this area, and Charlie Brown is up on top. And so this design would have K3 in this area. This would be a 4-6, and then this would be our 7-12, including a gymnasium as well as an auditorium. And again, put in perspective, this is a 3-story building. The second story would be built into the same elevation as Hannah Field, giving you access to locker rooms and being able to create efficiencies with our spaces and access onto the fields. One of the questions that has come up is parking. You know, parking is a significant issue for everybody that's ever worked or had affiliation with Valley City Public Schools, specifically the junior, senior high school. And so we made sure that there was enough parking. There's also potentially some overflow parking on the lime pit area over across the street, but sufficient as far as what we're looking at this time. So take a dive in and look at the designs, the plans. Again, this is a version, what I would tell you, from a very high level of taking a study and saying, how many students do you have? What's the spaces that would be required based on the student per square footage? And is there some cost savings, or is there some space savings with shared usage or shared spaces? And so that was the result. And again, until we go further or until we have more exploration relative to this, we've kept it at a relatively high level, saying, you know, a gymnasium, you have this gymnasium, but you're still going to need some gym space for your physical education classes, an auditorium for music concerts, plays, and other events. Page 2 is the second floor, and again, that still shows a phase 3, which is your K3, phase 2, which is 4-6, and then phase 1, which would be the middle school and the high school, and then the third floor, which is only phase 1 and phase 2. But take a look, and if you have questions, if there's specific things that stand out or point out, one of the questions that we've had is, are there efficiencies that can be created? We live in this virtual world now, and so what about consolidating kids further down and kind of doing a hybrid between virtual and in-person? And I think one thing that we've done well over the last couple of years is to emphasize our focus on in-person education and the priorities of that. And so at this point, we're not looking to abbreviate students' in-person education at Valley City Public Schools. And so square footage is based on our current enrollment right now, about 1,060 students. And so that's what we're going off of. The question that we had the other day was, is there enough room for potential growth? So if we do see a rapid enrollment, is there an ability to be able to add on to this? And the answer to that, yes, we would be able to. It'd just be, what direction do you choose to go, and are you relocating other spaces? So, and no, we're not taking out the pollinator gardens in any sort of conversation or proposal ideas we have with that. Sharon Bohr was at the last meeting. We made sure we addressed that with Sharon. The one conversation, just as an alternative idea that came out of this, is what if we don't want our K3 students with our 412 students? These are some other ideas that we could create from that. And so just throwing it out there that we did take off K3 and put it up in the area where the varsity football practice field is, or the Thunder football area, just for the sake of curiosity and conversation. All right, so we started in August. In August, we looked and had a conversation, met with, again, our architects, construction managers, and said, what is the cost right now, today, to build a new school? And they said the cost per square foot, going rate this summer has been $250 a square foot. And even that number at that time for us was like, whoa, that's a high number from our own investigation. We had conversation with Barnes County North, who had recently built a school, Maple Valley, who had just added on, and some other school districts around the state of North Dakota. And 2014, it was $185 a square foot. West Fargo Public Schools, that's having rapid enrollment and growth, they built schools in 2018 at $200 a square foot. And so we thought, there's a significant increase in the cost from 2018 to 2021. Of course, we attributed that to COVID at the time. And so the numbers we ran for public and shared with all of you was $55 to $65 million on $250 a square foot. We think we could build a 412 school. And here's how the funding potentially would look from that and break down. Well, in the matter of 7 or 8 months, we know what's happened across our country and the world as it relates relative to the price of just about everything, including a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread, definitely our fuel. And so the latest information that we've heard for cost of construction is around $370 a square foot. That's a 48% increase from August to May. I reported the other day at 33%, and a business manager said your number was low on that. So to put that into perspective, when we start looking at costs, 412 and a remodel, we said 55 to 65 million. Let's get the conversation going and find out. If we create efficiencies within our school district, there's justification in the long term of being able to do this. And then all of a sudden we hit the new reality, if you will, and maybe that's only temporary, but it is what it is for right now. 712 Phase 1, as of today's current numbers, is $55 million. Again, specifically for a 712, not including career and tech education. Some people have asked, well, why don't you break that number down even more? Why don't you think about a 7-8 or a 9-12? And the way we currently operate within our school district, we share a lot of staff members from our junior high to our senior high, and so you're only going to be adding operational costs to your district if you divide those out, so you won't have the cost savings, cost efficiencies. 4-6, Phase 2 specifically, is $10.5 million. And again, we approach this from a phased perspective and did build in some inflation along with that as well. K3 comes with more square footage. We added cafeteria, added gymnasium space, and so that's the reason why K3 has almost double the dollar amount than our 4-6 plan. So collectively, right now, we're looking at approximately $90 million. And when we started out and having the conversation regarding this, it was about $50 million or $55 million. And so as a school district, we've shared information regarding our funding options and using our COVID dollars, using our CTE funds, having a bond referendum, a vote of our public to increase the tax dollars to have tax contributions from our constituents, and the max that Valley City Public Schools would be able to bond with an increase on our debt limit from right now, which is set at 5%. So 5% would allow us to be able to bond up to $20 million. If the voters said, we'll double that limit to 10%, which is the max we would be able to levy then would be approximately $40 million. So right now, as we speak, on 7/12, we're maxing out on bonds, so approximately $290 per $100,000 residential property. I think, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, that's about $3.25 for an acre of land. So we're still short. There's still this financial gap then that exists, even if we were able to garner the maximum public support, which is 60% for this project. We still have this financial gap between $40 million and 55, or 40 million and 65 if you're looking at a 412, or 40 million and 90 million if you're looking at a K-12. And so we joked at the last meeting, maybe there's some people that know some other people outside of this community, other communities that have deeper pocketbooks that maybe want to have their name associated with a school in Eastern North Dakota. So by all means, if you know those people, send them our direction. We'd love to have a conversation with them. The other conversation, again, I'm not going to put Mike or Cole on the spot right now regarding this. We've had conversation regarding similar to the state CTE grant, which was a one-time allocation of dollars for facility and expansion purposes. Is there an appetite or an interest at the state level to take legacy funds or other dollars to be able to assist school districts of our size particularly that don't have the population, have the cost right now we're incurring in 2022, and have the needs with the facilities? Devil's Lake comes to mind, Jamestown comes to mind, and to be frank, I don't know that Barnes County North or Maple Valley would have constructed what they did without the allowable use of dollars that they had 4 or 5 years ago. And so we are in the situation, again, back to the original question, do you build new, or do you address your current facility needs? So we are having those conversations, and again, I'm not sure of the direction or the realistic possibilities of this, but to what it's worth, we would like to make our case that we have some facility needs. What we're ultimately trying to do is create efficiencies for our community to not burden our taxpayers any more than they already are. And so we came up with a few questions to ask, and we would like the input from our public relative to that. Is, do we ask for state funding to support local funds to build new schools or to remodel schools, such as the CT grant? Do we consider a local vote to address the capital maintenance plan? So again, if we say our capital maintenance plan right now is $26 million, our current allocation of district dollars from a general fund and a building fund don't stretch far enough for us to be able to take a sizable chunk of our capital maintenance plan to be able to address and knock out. Do we increase the building fund levy? Do we wait and to see if in 2 or 3 years or 5 years if the cost will decrease, if there'll be new funding options? Or we continue to use our current funds and address our capital maintenance plan? And I had a hiccup on my slide. 1 second. I apologize. Currently, our building fund in the school district, and I want to be more clear, so I added a slide for tonight's presentation. Currently, we levy $475,000 in approximately 12 mills. Each mill in our school district is valued at approximately $40,000, and so we bring in $475,000 total. These dollars are set aside for our general maintenance projects. We put about $200,000 aside each year for that. special projects such as roofing projects, or last year we put asphalt on our Hannah Field Jefferson parking lot, and then also for bond payments. We have, as a district, the ability to be able to levy up to 20 mills, and 20 mills would bring in approximately $800,000 annually into our school district. Again, that would be without having to go to the vote of the people, but would increase taxation on a $100,000 property by $37 a year. And so the question we have is, do we do what we're currently doing with the current allocation or the resources that we have, which is putting Band-Aids on a lot of the issues that we have? Do we look to increase our building fund, which would bring more dollars in? If we took those dollars and set those aside, we could save up to $4 million over 10 years. So even if we applied $4 million plus the $3 million, $7 million of the $26 million would be able to be addressed through the building fund and through our COVID dollars over the next 10 years. It's not addressing all the needs that we have, of course, but it gets us started and gets us moving. So that's where we're at, and again, back to the questions we have is, what is the direction for us? And you know, we wish that we would have had more resolution, gone through this, but what I tell you is that we've done the homework, we've asked the questions, and we've gotten to a point that some variables that we didn't expect were thrown our way. And so cost of maintenance, cost of renovation, new construction is on the increase, like we all know and experience right now. There's some specific things that need to be addressed in our schools, and so regardless of where we go over the next few years, we will, and you have our word as a school district, will be addressing our operational needs that we have, our health and safety, our ADA requirements. We don't want individuals with disabilities having to come into our school, not be able to have access to elevators, having to go outside because the elevation changes from one part of the school to the other part of the school. So there's things that we do need to address. Safety and security is another piece of that. But the bigger question that we have is really unresolved for us as a school district at this point, and it's, do we put out a referendum to put more dollars back into our current infrastructure and current schools, or do we look for other sources of funding somewhere else, and is that realistic for us as a school district? Or are the costs going to ultimately decrease and it'll be more affordable for us as a school district to be able to reconsider and go back and look at building new? So I feel as though we're leaving you, with this unanswered question that we've asked now 8 months or 9 months ago, and yet at the same standpoint, we know specifically what it is within our schools that do need to be addressed. And we've had a lot of great feedback along the way from people that are heavily invested in our community and care about the education of our kids, care about our facilities, and at the same point, want the best use of their tax dollars. And I think we can all agree with that as well. So what does the future look like, and where do we go from here? We're going to continue to have this conversation over the next few months, and we're looking for your feedback along the way to be able to know what is the best solution relative to this. And we're hoping that with that feedback, with more conversation regarding state funding, that maybe there is some solutions there that we haven't uncovered that will come to us in the next few months. But know again, in the meantime, we do have to continue to address the facility needs as we have been doing, but not to the extent that is necessary. And so if there's questions, comments, we'd love to try to answer the questions that you may have. And again, I don't want anybody walking away from here saying, we're not proud of the schools or the facilities that we have, the education. I think we have some real facility needs that need to be addressed, and we need to figure out what the solution is and how we address those. And the work is before the school board of this district and the community ultimately to make that decision, and I think that will come sooner than later. Any questions? You guys have been a much quieter audience, by the way, than the last group that was here.
Okay, my question is this. If you spend the 90 million or whatever, say you figure out where to get the money from.
Yep.
We're going to build new.
Sure.
which is great. However, you still have the hack, which is in the wrong spot.
Sure.
And you have the Jefferson School for 1, 2, 3, which is not new either.
Yep.
So basically what we're doing is we're spending a lot of money for a new facility that doesn't really bring everything up to new, or where it should be. The hack's in the wrong spot, 1 through 3 is in an older building. So might it be a better idea to just fix the facilities that we have, buy us another 20 years, and then we could look at possibly building, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because if you're going to build new, I get it. If it covered everything, all your problems were solved,
Yep.
that makes sense. But
Yep.
if you're not solving all your problems,
Yep. It's a great point. It's a very complex
yeah.
scenario, situation, exactly for the reason you did. If we could have Washington Elementary, where Jefferson is, and get rid of the pods and get rid of the small classrooms we had, I would tell you, and I stand here and say that there would absolutely be no reason why we would consider taking down that facility. But right now, the way that is set up, limited space and design creates a lot of real issues for us. And again, in 2003, this facility was built and put here because a few years prior to that, there was consideration to do something similar to what we're discussing now, and it was, let's just keep doing and let's put our monies into our current facilities. And then it leaves us kind of back to the situation. So it's a very good point, and I'm glad that you made it. It's very challenging to say, okay, in 20 years, if we invest $26 million, in 20 years, what is our cost for those maintenance of those facilities going to be at that point? And that's, I think, the concern that people have is how much will it take to be able to keep our current facilities operating beyond the next 20 years, 40 years, or 50 years, and is that, again, going to meet the educational needs of our kids in 20, 30, 40, 50 years? So, good point, good question. Yes?
When was the bond for the half paid off for this edition?
It's been paid off. It's been rolled over
I know,
into,
what year?
I think last year.
Just last year it was paid off.
I think so,
And
yeah.
what was that bond for when the voters approved it?
I thought it was, somebody can help me with that. I thought it was $3.5 million? 3.5 or 4 million, I believe.
So on the first plan, were the special ed offices included?
In the first plan of consolidating 412, we wanted the district office as well as special education offices
Right.
to be included in that.
They're in their own separate office.
They are, correct.
So they're not in this plan.
In this plan, that they would be included in that plan too.
In the phase one, the special ed offices would be. So who owns the special ed building right
The special
now?
education unit.
The unit.
Yep.
So we pay our share along with the other school districts that are involved in that.
Correct. Yep.
And what is the split?
About
Valley City
75%.
pays-
Valley City is about 75%
Okay,
of and it's broken out by student enrollment.
all right. And so what's the feedback from those other districts about moving the offices here?
I think they would be in support of it. Just based on the conversations with the facility that we had. Special education used to be in our current district office now.
I know that.
And then they broke off from that and have been operating a different, the old radio station, I believe it is.
It is.
And so we've looked over the last couple of years of, just because, again, what your space needs are, of being able to create some efficiencies and bringing them back in with the district office. So
What footprint does that take up in the new building?
I have no clue. So, good question. Other questions?
What would you do with if a new school was built, what would you do with this facility here at the Hack?
The first conversation we were having in the fall is to build a gymnasium space that would be for physical education and for recreation as well, but with the intent of keeping the Hack and continuing to use the Hack for event purposes and for community purposes.
And what would you do with there's, in this plan, you've got the ball fields down there. You're eliminating those 4 other ball fields for recreation.
Yep.
Where does that come into play?
Yeah, so good question. We've had conversation with Park and Rec, Tyler Jacobson, over the last 7, 8, 9 months, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Park and Rec, but they have a facility vision, Park and Rec vision, that would fit if we were to ever consider buying land from that at Highline Park. So they're identifying that some of their spaces they're maybe outgrowing some of their spaces, and they're looking at what their needs are and where those locations are.
And would that be funded through them or funded through any taxpayer dollars?
Park and Rec would be, I'm not sure what they would do and what their sources of funding would be for that. I'm assuming there's probably a public source of tax dollars for the projects.
So to
Yes.
follow up on that, you don't have anything in here for land purchase. So you're assuming Park and Rec is just going to give you that?
No, the number, the $90 million, is a pretty rough estimate. And again, we've had very, very preliminary conversation with them. The bigger issue that we really truly have right now is where do you come up with dollars to be able to fill a financial gap between
Right.
40 million and 55 million, and so we have significantly more issues than what the actual cost would be from Highline Park.
So it's 55 million plus if you had to buy new land from Park and Rec.
To be frank with you, with the dollars and the way inflation is going, by the time we would ever consider looking at building, it's going to be much more than $55 million, if that's what you're getting towards. It is. It's just a reality.
I understand that, but then
Yep.
when we think 55 million, you're saying it's going to be more than 55 million.
If I had to guess, based on the last 8 months, we've seen a 48% increase in the cost of construction. And there's people here a lot smarter than I am when it comes to economic times, and I would guess that cost would probably be low. I know there's several school districts currently in the process of building that are running into some real significant issues because they went out, they bonded for a dollar amount and then received bids, and those bids are coming much, much higher. And so what we're presenting to you guys right now is that right now, based on the information that we've put together and the information that our community gave us feedback to look towards is a 3-phase plan. Minimally, on a 7-12 plan, we're looking at about $55 million to construct. And of course, there's going to be a lot of, other potential costs, or maybe there'll be cost savings with that. Maybe, who knows? Maybe something economically will change in our country or globally, and the price will go the other direction. I have no idea, but if I had to guess, I'd say it's only going to go higher.
Yeah, so we talk about getting the money, the 90 million, that's a tough number, like you said, probably.
Yeah.
Who knows how that happens? But the 26 million, I think, is the building maintenance.
Yeah.
Right, you can't do it through mill levy either.
Correct.
Some of it can. What would a referendum look like to just get that done, right? I mean, is that feasible, and what would it look like, and therefore, right?
Yeah, I'm going to make sure Tom corrects me if I'm wrong relative to this. So if you did, as an example, a $25 million referendum, Tom, I think we're at about $200 per $100,000. So if we did a referendum on our capital maintenance plan, and so we asked our taxpayers for $25 million to be able to address the most significant portion of our maintenance needs, $200, a little bit less per $100,000 property is what they ask would be over a 20-year period. Good question. I wish we had the magic answer sitting here, you guys. I wish, it goes back to where you said, and again, we're not going to cast any blame back on those that decided to build this facility in 2003, but you like to say, well, and each different generation or board has their reasons and what they did, why they did, and so we set out to this and said, is there efficiencies long-term that you can create in your school district by consolidating and bringing people together under one roof? And majority of that is going to come through your staffing, and others are going to come from energy cost savings or maintenance cost savings. And so we're in a tough time right now. And again, I think that the challenge is that everybody are facing are not specific relative to construction, and yet I think the resolve of the community is to roll up your sleeves and figure out the solutions and figure out what's best ultimately for our kids and our future generations. And so I think that's the work that has been done. And again, I hope if there's anything that you've received or taken away from this, is that this has not by any stretch of the imagination been a knee-jerk reaction or a chase after something flashy and new by the school board. It's really been truly a deep dive and to look through and to vet this. And had we raced forward in the way that we were in the fall, we would be in a situation that, would have created, honestly, more challenges, even if we would have had community support. Ryan, anything to add? Our board members?
Yeah, I guess, this is informational. I mean, we're trying to be transparent with where we're at in the process. It's going to be a long haul. We're not saying that we're going to come up and try and get a referendum this summer or next fall or anything like that. We're here trying to present as much information. There's still a lot of thought and some conversations like, what is that property going to cost us and things like that. All those things still have to actually be vetted out and everything. We have to have those agreements in place so that when we do come to the taxpayers and ask for that vote and ask them to approve it, then we have to have them have those numbers so that they're ready to go.
I would like to say one thing before we leave, and you mentioned about senior citizens and understanding why they weren't in favor of, but you kind of just glossed over ag land. Well, I think it's important for people to know what this might mean for landowners, which might not be the same people that rent the land, but just on, let's say, a couple sections of land based on, which is not taxable value, but appraised value, based on productivity. So that could be an extra $4,000 a year just for 2 sections of land, which is small these days. And somebody already could be paying $7,500 a year. So, I mean, that's a big increase, just for school taxes.
Yep. In today's day and age, increase in taxation for right now, where it's hitting our people is real.
And I know that you as a board know that because you have farmers on the board and on the planning committee. But a lot of people don't understand who have never lived on the farm, and there are generations now that haven't, so that you understand what it means for an ag landowner.
Thank you. Other questions? Yeah.
Well, so to expand on that a little bit, I guess I also think back about the taxes that it means for me. You referenced 12 mills currently being levied by the school district.
Out of the building fund.
Out of the building.
Yeah, only the building fund.
And so for reference, how many mills are levied currently from the school district in total?
What's our total mill levy, Tom?
98.
98, sounds right.
A few years back, about 8 or 9 years ago, the state had a property tax decrease and took a lot of those mills away, and so that brought us down back to our current level where we're at right now.
And you do have the capability for the building maintenance to go up to 20 mills.
Correct.
And what would a $25 million referendum mean in number of mills?
Good question. $25 million referendum in mills, again, would just be a singular vote, Tom, and would be a dollar amount then back to the taxpayers on an acre of land or on their proper assessed value of their property.
We issue bonds, it'd be like a loan, we issue bonds, and then building fund would be used to pay off those bonds.
I don't know, and I could find that information out for you on what the exact would be, say on an acre of land, if you did a $25 million referendum and what that would look like again back to our taxpayers.
Well,
Approximately,
20 million is 323, so 25 million would be whatever percentage of $3.23. I don't have that number yet.
Monty, under $200 is what that would be for a $100,000 property. Follow-up questions, other questions?
We would have those numbers if we're really
Yeah.
serious about it. When we're
Exactly.
asking for the people, we have those numbers to the penny available.
Follow-up or any other questions? Yes, sir.
When does this decision have to be made? I mean, because obviously at some point, we're gonna have to come to.
Good question.
You know, if the current structures that we have need maintenance,
Yep. good.
that's gonna have to be addressed, or, you know,
Yep.
this,
Good question. So right now, our capital maintenance plan is based on the most immediate needs. Our most immediate needs are approximately $400,000. And so what our immediate is to take our current resources and apply those to the most immediate needs that we have. Then we break it down in years 2 through 6. This is our next needs. For us as a school district, with the resources that we have, about $200,000, it's not going to cover much. And so by October 10th, the school district will decide, are we going to continue to levy the building fund at 12 mills, or do we increase that and then start banking those dollars to address the capital maintenance? And so, or is there other solutions that are out there longer term? So that's the immediate, is you maintain current levies, current dollars, addressing what you can and what we've been doing, or do you increase the building fund and that will be by beginning of October. And again, for anyone, just again, that's a decision that if the board or the school district would consider that, anyone who would see a tax increase would receive notification of that. The board has a public tax hearing to explain specifically how those dollars are tied and what they're tied to from a facility standpoint.
And the $3 million in federal funds that we have received needs to be spent or returned to the federal government by August of '24?
September of '24.
September of 24.
Good question. Back to the timelines again.
well, could that 3 million be used towards addressing?
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. And what's nice now, by having done what we've done, is we know specifically what needs to be addressed and the manner in which it needs to be addressed, from most immediate to
So there's a pot of $3 million sitting there that could be used.
absolutely, and it's
Okay.
sitting there, and it's again remained untouched and available for us if we need it. Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier about not wanting to put Polaroid under
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
pressure from the
No, I
state
don't.
level. But you mentioned that those two magic words, legacy fund.
Yeah.
And I don't want to bring a bunch of gloom and doom here, but I just want to let you know how complicated this is. What is the legacy fund intended to be? It's intended to be something that the state can draw on down the road when something happens that we need to draw on. We had to do a few years ago with the economic situation. The oil is going to run out sometime, and the legacy fund is supposed to be building so as to help us to maintain a budget level in perpetuity from that. So it's, the Good Idea Fairy is liberally sprinkling Good Idea Fairy dust all over, and you've probably heard the word legacy fund for all kinds of things. There's all kinds of people clamoring to get to the legacy fund. And our legislature has done a really good job over the last few years of nicking away pieces of the growth on the legacy fund to use for this, for that, and the other thing. And so that keeps happening, which of course slows down the actual growth of the legacy fund. And currently with oil prices everybody's going to be going, woohoo, but we're at what, 8.5% inflation rate right now? So that $8 billion that's in there is 8.5% worth less now than it was. So, and there's lots of people clamoring for that. So it's going to take some creativity if there's any ability to tap into that. But I wouldn't want to encourage you to put a whole lot of effort into that end, because once you open that Pandora's box, oh, Valley City gets a new school, hey, we want a new school too, oh, we're gonna put, this building up over here, and we need a new courthouse, and that's what's gonna happen, so, there'll be a lot of resistance, it'll take some finesse to figure out what might be in the realm of the possible, but it's a complicated issue. And we have a $14 billion biennial budget now. So that $8 billion, if things were to fall at the bottom, will hardly get us through 1 year's worth of expenses in the state. So that's not really much of a legacy fund right now. So people think that's a lot of money, but put it in perspective of what our budget is.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah.
The challenge we have in Valley City is Minot and Grand Forks and Fargo's and West Fargo's, they don't have the challenge, the same challenge from a facility standpoint in the immediate as we do, because they're able to spread the burden to build new schools over across many taxpayers in their districts. And of course, they have the growth to go along with that as well. And so it really, again, comes back down to is where do we want to be 20, 30, 40 years from now, and being responsible with the decisions that we're making. And again, I don't want anyone walking away from here and saying that sole answer rests with building a new school. It doesn't. And it's the conversation that the board is going to continue to be tasked with going forward. And we appreciate the input, the questions, the consideration from our public. I hope from the last 7 or 8 or 9 months, as Ryan references transparency, we've tried to be as transparent as absolutely possible with the information that's been gathered, and giving that information back out to our public to be able to solicit feedback and opinions and thoughts and ideas. And so we want that idea within this exploration to continue, because there isn't an end to this at this point, and yet we know we have to address our facilities. So, all right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Appreciate your time this evening, and we're going to have an excellent finish to our school year, and let's hope the weather starts warming up. We start seeing summer weather soon. So thank you.